Greetings, friends. That gaming author, I almost called myself Crom because that was my old. I've had so many
Yeah.
stupid usernames. Anyway,
Yeah.
screw it. Oh yeah,
At least one of each of them is in the titles of one of my videos.
yeah. Yeah,
That's how long I've known you.
you're not wrong. Like, yeah, you've known me back when I was still freaking Decidia dude.
Yeah,
But
man.
oh my god, that was years
That was
ago.
the first one. No, no, the first one. I won't even say out
Oh
loud,
yeah, no,
dude.
it's I know the one. I know the one. That's yeah, that's a. We're gonna have to talk about that one. Anyway,
Some
welcome.
behind the scenes for you and our friends here.
Anyway, welcome to chapter 3 of our D&D session. If everyone's ready, we can go and just jump right on into it.
Hell yeah, my character sheet's right here. My dice are loaded. Let's do this. Alright, no, that sounded weird. My dice are not loaded. I'm not cheating.
All right.
That's
Nothing for
not
nothing.
at all what I meant.
Yeah, I think we got an idea. All right. So, with that being the case, we'll go ahead and dive right on in. So, last time, you guys had left the outpost of Oraltros and began making your way north towards the City of Livia, since that is where Holly Beckstrom, the strange woman who gave you little to no answers on anything, told you guys to go. And she specified to go through the east entrance. And on your way, you encountered a few strangers. You saw like a freaking trail of fruit falling behind this car, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's suspicious." But then, what was even more suspicious was the strange church group you guys met out in the forest, and they turned out to be, well, they turned out to be something. That's for sure. That's for sure. And so you go through the forest and you tried your best to kind of avoid these guys and created a bit of a diversion so they wouldn't follow you, or at least at a decent pace. But after thinking they were the worst of it, two men in the sky came and utterly destroyed everything. Didn't even touch you guys because you guys are awesome. But you've managed to kill one of them, which I'd say should have been impossible, but at the same time, like I said, you guys are awesome, so freaking whatever. And with that, with the last of his strength, he not only burned the forest you had just exited, but the City of Livia as well. Your very destination, and destroyed however much of it you saw. So that finally brings us to the late afternoon as you guys are making your way into the city. Matthias, as you have been controlling this horse, you went off track a few times as you were in the middle of combat, but you managed to get the horse back on track. And finally, you make your way towards the eastern entrance to the City of Livia. And as soon as you're entering, you can immediately smell, you immediately catch that whiff of just smoke and soot, and the sky over the City of Livia is just covered with black and gray smoke, and you can't even see the sun at this point. Like, you can see it behind you, but entering the city is just completely dark. Looking around, you can see a lot of the buildings have just completely crumbled. Like, a lot of the wooden buildings are still burning here and there, and you can hear kind of the faint cries and screams of people in the distance after this calamity that has happened. So there are survivors, though there's no telling how many there are, for that matter. But you take this carriage down the road, and you just look around at the buildings, and Matthias and Soren, I would like you both to make perception checks.
Fantastic.
Oh
Already.
my god, so I will take pictures or videos of me rolling dice if you don't believe me. But I just rolled a natural 1 again on my chaos dice.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, the chaos dice.
Don't use that.
It's
Are you
beauteous.
trying
Yes.
to kill us all?
Okay.
I mean, kind of.
But listen, it also rolls an
You know
equal
what?
number or more of natural 20s. So
Yeah.
You know what? It's okay. It's okay because I, however, rolled a nat 20.
Oh
Alright.
my gosh!
So, with that,
So
I'm gonna go ahead and send you notes for what it is you see, because there's a reason why I made it to where it was the two of you who rolled in particular.
do I just get like speck of dust
Oh yeah, yeah.
His eye, and he's like busy.
Yeah, just trying to get it out, and like you're not even focusing anyway. Like this city is covered in smoke, so you're just coughing and trying to get it out. All right, do with that information what you will.
Interesting.
Okay.
So yeah, I just wanted to let you know just ahead of time, and since you were at the front of the cart, that is just something you would have picked up on. But regardless, you go ahead and take this in, and looking around, you don't really see a lot of people. The streets are lined with just ruined buildings and houses, and from what you can tell, this eastern area of the city is or was rather, a residential district surrounded by houses that are now just in complete ruins. You take the cart along these roads, and you can hear people just sobbing, mourning their loved ones, and rushing into burning houses to grab whatever belongings or remains they can gather from these ruins of the city. And as you go ahead and move forward, the horses just kind of come to a stop, and they are not moving at this point. So, what would you like to do?
Like to just say, I hope the bar's okay.
Of course. So, with that, the horses have just completely stopped, and looking around, you don't necessarily see anyone just looking at you guys. Everyone else seems to be scurrying around, and they are, like I said, doing whatever they can to just gather their belongings, and everyone seems to be heading in the northern direction. So, what would you guys like to do?
To consult the
Where?
others on this one.
Where were we? Who were we supposed to meet somebody? I can't remember.
She just said to come to the eastern entrance, but as far as that, you guys don't really have anything else other than the name Egil Savage, which you, Soren, do know as the owner of a pub close to the castle, which is further north.
Bar, here!
So, what, are you going to try to get the horses moving again?
Yeah, 'cause you need an animal.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're going to try to get the horses moving again, go ahead and make an animal handling check.
Roll a fucking one, they just drop down dead.
Yeah, I bet that's what would happen. However, I did get a 17.
Yeah, so you do go ahead and snap the reins, and the horses, they kind of clomp, they are not wanting to move forward. They, like, take a single step with their front legs, but then they just kind of back off and just kind of shake their heads and just almost scoff, and just, they do not go forward.
There's not much that makes me excited but alcohol.
Right, but we weren't told to go to the bar, were we? We were just told to go to the eastern entrance.
And we did that. Now it's time to go to the bar.
So,
You could always use a little fun.
Do you really think the bar is going to be open and ready to serve right now in the middle of this crisis?
I don't see why not. People need to dull their senses.
and Bob's just like, all bars in hell are open, regardless of the circumstances.
Well, it is hell, so they've adapted.
I mean, come on. We just destroyed basically a god. I think that warrants a celebration.
In a burning town.
I forgot the city we're riding into is
It's decimated. Like,
decimated.
this entire thing was just completely blown to pieces.
Freaking.
Can I roll a perception check to see if the bar is okay?
Yeah, you can definitely go for it.
Awesome. I'm gonna do that.
It's just...
Don't even worry about it. It's gonna be fine. Don't worry.
Okay, well, you're just gonna make a perception check. Like, the bar could still be burned
I was
down.
gonna say.
Yeah.
That's 20! Are you gonna be able to
Uh,
tell that it's burned down?
So, did you seriously just roll a nat 20?
Yes.
Unfortunately, from where you're at, you cannot actually see the bar. The bar is in a completely different district. But you do recall people were heading north, and Soren, you know the bar is further north from where you guys are at because you grew up in this city, so you're well aware of its geography.
It's not the bar from my prologue, is it?
It is. The one they found Lucius in.
Sure. So that's, okay, this is fine. I would probably know the name then, so
Yeah.
I would be able to very easily direct how to get there.
Alright, perfect.
I mean, I have it written down
Yeah, old
Like
savages. So,
from like forever ago.
like I mentioned, the horses are not moving from this spot. So you guys just want to get up and try walking there?
I trust my own 2 feet rather than some hooves.
Alright, but what are you gonna do with the horses?
Yeah, leave them. Who's gonna steal them?
And Bob's
I
like,
mean,
he
probably
has a
a
good
large
point.
number of people.
The city was destroyed.
Right? And people are gonna want to be leaving.
Who's alive?
Judging by the screams, quite a few people.
Will they be for long? Is the question.
Alright, cheerful lot you are.
Cassie's just quiet this whole time because she's still kind of like shaken from the fight.
That's perfectly understandable. So while you guys are having this conversation, you do hear kind of like a low male's voice kind of shouting commands in the distance, and you hear very loud armor clanking, and he's like, get them that way. Come on now. And looking in the distance, you can see a somewhat, like, it's a very medium height, half-elven male who is clad in just this very heavy iron armor, and he's carrying a kind of a long sword. It's still in its sheath, but he's holding it by the hilt, and he's just commanding this group of soldiers who are carrying all these wounded and just burned people, and they are heading to the north. And he turns towards you, and he kind of goes ahead and heads towards you. And getting a closer look at him, you can see he's got like very bright blue eyes, and he's got like just dark brown hair pulled back into a ponytail. And it's kind of like bouncing behind him as he's running towards you, his armor clanking. And he goes, "Where do you all hail from? Were you in the city when this happened?"
No, but we were going into this city. We killed the guy that did it.
Roll an intimidation check.
That's not technically true, we killed his friend, but one of them.
Yeah.
Intimidation. 15.
Not bad. He goes, "Well, shit, who am I to say whether or not this is true or not? Regardless, you do come in here out of nowhere, and after this whole calamity, whatever, it's strange." He goes ahead and kind of examines the horses, and the horses don't actually seem intimidated by him. He goes ahead and pats the sides of their faces, and he goes, "This is the end of the line for them. These were from Oral Trust, am I correct?"
I'm not at the front of the cart, so I can't be like, yeah.
You leave all
Soren
the...
isn't saying anything because she's afraid someone's gonna recognize her, so she's trying to lay low.
Damn it! It's up to me to come up with something.
Yeah, you're leading the caravan at the moment, so he's mostly talking to you.
I can't really say much. I'm insane.
Yeah, don't let our Krampin say much.
Depends on what you mean by the word "from."
This half elf man, he kind of looks at you with kind of a cocked head and like a lifted eyebrow, and he goes, "Rental horses. They come between the City of Livia and the outposts of Oral Trust. members of the Crown's Guard, merchants, we all, when we live in one or the other, we often take them, and I'd recognize these horses from anywhere, so I just wanted to know if you came from Oral Tross with these horses, or if you maybe found them along the road somewhere.
We rented it.
And he nods, and he's like, fair enough. If you wouldn't mind, please come out with the cart. The horses will not take you any further.
You got some kind of horse curse on the village?
Do you actually say that out loud, or?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and he just goes, oh, no, they're trained to stop in certain areas, and this eastern entrance here is where the horses are trained to stop. From here, you'd normally take a carriage here in the town that can transport you between the different districts, but these rental horses, this is as far as they go.
I will go ahead then and pack up my stuff, put my hood up as far as it's gonna go, and get out.
Alright, yeah, no, you're fine.
I do
So,
an Arcana check on them.
on this person?
Yes.
Alright, go for it.
Cool.
While he's doing that, Cassie's gonna grab her cloak from the back since previously she had abandoned it, and she's just gonna pick it up and kind of try to conceal it, but at this point she's kind of just like over it, and she puts her shield just like on her back. It's in plain sight at this point.
Okay, so the shield you began with, not the one you bought. Okay.
Mhm.
Alright, I'll keep that.
10, by the way.
A 10? Okay, yeah,
10.
you don't really sense any magic from this guy. He just seems like a regular guy. You do recognize that he is wearing the garb of the Crown's Guard here in the province of Orlivia, but no magical essence about him.
Soren, did you get out of the cart?
Yep.
Okay, I'm also out of the cart.
Alright, so you
Next
two have
is
gone
Soren.
out of the cart. And as you're doing so, this man, he's kind of like just petting the horses, and they seem to be enjoying it. While they were shaken from all the events you guys have just gone through and going into the city that is normally familiar territory to them and seeing it just completely destroyed, they are definitely quite shaken, but this man seems to be really good at just calming them down.
Nice man.
And he just laughs and he goes, "Oh, I've been around all these horses for quite some time. It's you get to know them very well." All right, and Arkrampin and Matthias, are you guys getting out too?
Oh yeah, I got off a while ago.
Okay, I wanted to make sure because I didn't.
I
Yeah,
pull
I got
my
off
cloak.
when I was complaining about the horses.
Oh, okay, good.
I pull my cape around me and get off of the carriage.
All right, so you go ahead and play your cape around you, and as you're getting off, it just kind of does this very dramatic, like swoosh around you and kind of slowly close around you, and yep, and the half.
Trying to follow Soren's example as not wanting to be recognized.
Fair enough. So
Well, hers was more Assassin's Creed. Yours was more like Batman, where he makes a whole flair about it. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I don't have a hood.
there you go. So as you guys get
I
off,
have a cape. That is it.
So as you guys get off, this half-elf male, he just kind of looks at all of you and he goes, "So, you tell me you killed the man who did this to our city. Is that so?"
Killed
So what-
50% of the party responsible.
I mean, he's
I'm
not
sorry,
wrong.
what?
Said he
Killed 50% of the party responsible.
Oh,
All right, fair enough. And
He's not wrong.
and the man nods and he just kind of strokes his chin. You can kind of see he's got like the very faintest wisps of like a almost a beard, and he is like, "I see. Well, since you are here, I suppose if you killed him, you must be particularly strong, and we are in need of quite a few people like you. Would you mind coming with me for a little bit? I assure you, I can lead you all someplace safe.
Sure, why not?
Bob just kind of shakes his head and he's like, hold on, hold on. Are you sure we should be trusting someone we just met?
You've got a lot
Quiet
of time
down,
for being
Bob.
on a stick.
Would I recognize some kind of insignia or ranking on this particular individual to decide whether it's a trustworthy person or not?
Go ahead and make a perception check.
Oh my god.
Oh no.
Oh my god.
What?
She probably
It's
will.
another natural one, you guys.
Oh, the chaos die.
Wait.
Wait.
Can I
Poor
also roll
lad.
for perception for it? Because I'm like of, you know.
Well, I mean, these are the,
Is it just a D20
Oh, yeah, well, I
and
guess
half
it
of
is.
them are
Never
ones
mind.
and
Oh, yeah.
half of them are 20s?
uh,
You know, the way it rolls, sometimes you would think that.
so yeah, I mean, just from what you can tell, he is a member of the Crown's Guard, but that's all you can tell, really. But,
Don't say anything then.
alright, fair enough.
Humble at the side of authority.
Fair enough. So he goes ahead and turns around and he begins walking through this kind of burned alleyway you guys came in from. And he's like, don't worry about the horses. Leave them there. I will send a few people to come and gather the horses and send them back to Oil Tross. So come with me. So do you guys follow?
Yep.
Alright. So you guys follow. And as...
Accompany you beyond my own amusement.
As we're walking, are there like burning buildings like as we're walking, or?
Yeah, they're pretty much everywhere at this point. Like some brick buildings, they're not really burning, but they are like essentially crumbled and have become ruins essentially. But a lot of the buildings with kind of like wooden interiors and exteriors are still burning, and there is a lot of smoke in the air, by the way. But it's not enough to disturb you guys yet necessarily.
One of the burning buildings, I want to toss my cloak into the fire.
Alright, easy enough. As you guys are walking behind this man, you go ahead and just take your cloak and you just kind of watch it burn a little bit, and then you turn around and catch up. And now that you guys have exited this alleyway and you're on a cobblestone road, just kind of weaving through this former residential district, we can see other members of the Crown's Guard. These are the ones that you saw earlier, the ones that were carrying all the people who looked wounded or just too shaken to move. And they're all chatting amongst themselves, and it doesn't sound like a lot of pleasantries happening. You can, like, just at a glance, you can tell these guys have their work cut out for them. They are going and gathering as many people as they can and taking them to this northern area. And the half-elf male, he finally takes his hand off the hilt of his sword and just kind of crosses his arms, and he says, "It's a shame what happened. The king's gone, and who knows where the queen went. She was there one day and just vanished the next. If they were here, I don't think this would have happened."
Soren coughs slightly in the background.
And then you hear another male soldier kind of running up, and he kind of hears armor clanking, and he hurries up to this man in front of you, and he goes, "Hey, Glenn, I believe we've gathered the rest of them from the Western District, and they are being taken to the pub as we speak." And the half-elf male just nods, and he's like, "All right, good, then if you can join us, that'd be preferable. I'd much prefer us not being scattered, all things considered, but I feel it's necessary, given the scope of what's just happened." And the man nods, and looking at him, he's kind of got like a short, curly red hair, and he looks way more pale than the man you've been talking to. And he's wearing the same Crown's Guard outfit, but underneath, he's wearing like like a cloak, a cleric's garb, kind of like a Soren. You'd recognize it to look similar to what Lucius had been wearing, and he turns around, and looks at all of you, and he's got these like a kind of bright green eyes, and like given the situation, he looks surprisingly not necessarily happy-go-lucky, but he looks like he's struggling to keep an optimistic demeanor, and he looks at all of you and he goes, "Oh, who might these be?" And the other male, he's like, "Oh, they came from Oil Truss. We can get introductions later once we're actually where we're meant to be." But regardless, he turns to the rest of you and he goes, "My name is Glenn Jourdain. I am I was a general in the Crown's Guard. I worked directly with uh, King Garen as well as the Lord Diedrich. And this here, he is my colleague," and he goes ahead and pats the shoulder of the curly red-haired man. And he goes, "Oh yes, my name is Serge Malocamp. I am, I suppose you could say, Glenn's right-hand man." And he just kind of chuckles and he goes, "So, Oral Truss, I'm very sorry that you all had to come here under such circumstances. We had no idea this was going to happen. Are you all okay?"
All fine. I could use a rest.
And Bob's like, "Exploding cities is no skin off my back." And Serge kind of looks at the imp on your staff and tilts his head, and he kind of points at it and looks at you, R. Crampon, and he's like, is there a story behind this one?"
Yes, there is.
and Serge just kind of looks, and he's not even making eye contact. He's just his eyes are kind of like drifting, and he's like, he
And
kind
I'm
of
like I'm looking like my head is like in his direction, but my eyeballs are like off in like two separate directions. Like my right eye is looking at the upper right, and my left eye is looking at like lower left. It's
Oh,
just like
Jesus.
completely opposite, going.
fair enough. And he just Serge nods, and he's like, "Okay." And then he looks at you, Soren, and he goes, "I think I've seen you before. Were you in the Church of Giselle up north?"
Not recently.
And he nods, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, I did hear about that incident. I know you were part of it, but..." And he kind of looks at Glenn, who, kind of looking at him, his face has gone sullen, but... And he finally nods, and he goes, "We've heard all about it, and before this incident, well, we were looking for you. But, all things considered, I feel like that doesn't matter anymore." And he looks at you, and he can see, like, your hood, and he's like, Don't worry about people recognizing you. No one's gonna worry about this. You are free to roam in the city, I suppose, but don't worry, it's just... we don't know what to do at this point."
For what it's worth, it wasn't our fault.
And Serge nods, and he's like, "Oh, yes, we know. We actually heard from the man who was responsible for the accident. The one who convinced you to do this, and... well, we were going to put him into protective custody, but... well, this happened, and there isn't really much we can do anymore."
Are you talking about Ben?
And both Serge and Glenn just kind of nod, and Glenn's like, "Peculiar fellow, he seems nice enough. I couldn't believe he would convince you to do such a thing."
Well, I'm not entirely sure it was just him alone.
And he nods, and he's continuing to stroke his non-beard, and he's like, "Yes, I believe he mentioned something about the, what was it, the One True Church, or some bullshit like that."
Aye, that's right. We went with him in the city.
Just look up and I look down.
Fair enough, and Glenn nods, and he's like, "Well, regardless, all of that is water under the bridge. We have more pressing matters to attend to." And as you guys...
Hear it?
as you guys are walking, you guys are walking for quite some time, and as you go ahead and get further into the city, it's essentially impossible to tell what time it is by this point. The sky is so covered by smoke that it practically seems like it's like the dead of night at this point. But like the fires from the buildings are kind of illuminating your path. You can continue hearing the screams of people, and as you hear them, some of the soldiers who aren't carrying anyone, they kind of glance at each other and quickly dart into the flaming buildings, and they come out carrying people and just children just sobbing for their parents and wondering where everyone went. And finally, you get to a much wider road than the one you've been on. This road is it's cobblestone, but you can see kind of you can see tracks where wheels have gone. And Soren, you would know that this is the main road, which is what kind of splits the city of Livia off into its 6 districts. And this is where before the city had been destroyed, this is where the different carriages would have taken people to and from the different districts. And Glenn looks up and he goes, "We're almost at the commercial district." And he looks over at Serge and he goes, "Have you heard from Janice yet?" And Serge shakes his head and he goes, "Not yet, but I think she was doing work over in the southwestern residential district, so we may be seeing her later tonight, I believe." And Glenn's like, "Good. I hope she made it out safely." And finally, you guys are heading north, and looking forward, you can see the commercial district that once lied before the castle of Livia, where King Garen and Queen Lenora once lived, and now it is in utter shambles. The brickwork has just completely crumbled. Some of the wooden fixtures inside are charred, and some of it's not even there anymore, and it is just utterly destroyed. And behind it, Soren, you can see the place you once called a home. It still looks surprisingly tall, but there are like edges along the top that have just kind of crumbled in, and the stained glass windows have all essentially been shattered. And as you go ahead and head further north, you are finally heading into territory that you are familiar with. And you come to the former commercial district, and you can finally see where everyone's been congregating. You can see crowds of people surrounding you, and just in this general vicinity, like, you can hear the murmurs of people just kind of talking, and you look over at where they're going, and you can see they're all lined up to enter Old Savage's pub. And looking at this pub, you can actually see it's the only building in the commercial district that has remained completely intact. And,
Well, ain't that a coincidence?
Arkrampin, actually go ahead and make a perception check.
Oh, okay, but alright.
Or actually, yeah, no, make perception check will work.
Yeah, because I was actually going to use an item.
Oh, I know what you're going to use, but yeah, no, perception will work for this.
Perception. 1 7 here. Alright. So like 23.
What the heck? So,
I'm what's it called? Proficient in it.
oh, okay, that explains it. So looking at this, you can sense familiar magic coming from it, even without making an Arcana check. But looking at it, you can see kind of this faint blue glow emanating from the building, and you can kind of see white streaks running down it. And you can tell this building was protected from this calamity that destroyed the city. And looking around you, you can see this line. It starts off single file, but then it like slowly grows, almost like in a funnel formation, as people just begin gathering until the streets of the commercial district are completely crowded and people can't really fit anymore. People are starting to nudge into each other, but you guys happened to make it with the Crown's Guard, who the crowd is kind of parting for, and you guys are kind of traveling with them. And Glenn is kind of moving his hands, parting the red seas of people, so to say, and he's just, "Come on, move it, we've got injured here." And he goes ahead and makes his way into the pub, and you guys go to follow, but behind you, you can kind of hear, and behind you, this plume of smoke and sparks, and just people behind you screaming, and in the smoke, you can't even see what it was, but just you can hear people either in pain or panic behind you, just freaking out, and here you are at this tall building that Soren definitely looks a lot taller than it was last time you saw it. It is looking about 5 stories tall at this point, and the old wooden structure of it definitely looks aged and a little bit charred, but it is still. It definitely looks perfectly together. Do you guys go in along with the Crown's Guard members?
Yeah.
All right. So you guys go ahead and walk into this pub, and the moment you do, you just feel this cool breeze wash over you as you pass through the door, and inside the air is completely fresh. There's no smoke or anything, but you do look down and you can see the Crown's Guard members kind of gathering the bodies of the injured and checking the pulses of people who don't appear to be conscious, and kind of pulling the bodies aside that don't look like they've made it, and are taking them into a door behind the bar. And Glenn looks up at all of you, and he goes, "Well, if you came from Oral Truss, given the timing, I think you were the ones that old Egil told us about. I suppose, feel free to take a seat. We can talk drinks once we've cleared the area." And he goes ahead and he helps the remainder of the Crown's Guard help carry these bodies and move them into another door in the back that seems to lead up a flight of stairs, but the door closes before you can see where the flight of stairs leads. And now the 4 of you, or 6 of you, I suppose, if you want to count certain parties, are just sitting here in this bar while the Crown's Guard members are helping out all the injured and carrying even more in and going out to continue looking for more people. So, with that being the case, what would you like to do?
Just
I'm
sit
gonna
down
get a
first.
drink.
Alright, so you guys, those of you who want to drink, you do sit at the bar, but there is no one currently working the bar at the moment.
So, are we free to just reach over the bar and take what we want?
I mean, if you want to, you can certainly try.
I would like to do that.
Alright, are you... do you care if people see or not?
No.
Alright, so easy enough. You go ahead and just kind of go around the bar and start fixing drinks for everyone, and just go ahead and set them down, and
Become like the new bartender, start just mixing random drinks. Always good enough.
I am not drinking anything he gives me.
Oh, come on! Don't you trust me?
No, you're a crazy old man.
Absolutely.
This is accurate information, but if you just have a try, I'll tell you the secret ingredient.
Something the strongest thing you can.
Horse urine! Got it!
God.
Oh
There is a shortage of horse urine in this bar.
There's a
Please
shortage
tell me
of
that's the
what?
name of a drink.
Oh my god.
Alright, and as you're doing this, you hear very kind of heavy footsteps descending the stairs in the door that the Crown's Guard members have been going through. And the door swings open, and you just hear, "Oh, what the fuck?" And this this short dwarven male with like this somewhat bushy beard, and like he's kind of got like he's got one eye, like the other eye is appears to have been pulled out of its socket, but he does not seem to mind. And he runs behind the
Upon
beer.
hearing that, I just like freeze mid like pouring of a drink.
And he goes ahead and like grabs your wrists and like just wrenches it away, and he's like, "This is my bar. What the fuck do you think you're doing?"
You know, I ask myself that question a lot too.
And Bob, what?
I like to imagine that as our cramping stopped, like froze while pouring, the liquid froze too because of magic.
Yes! Yes!
All right, yeah, that
That's
is
what I'm talking about.
that is definitely the way our Crampon rolls. So yeah, and freaking this dwarven male, he just kind of scoops up the frozen liquid and shoves it back into the tap.
He, he's like the Deadpool of
Mm.
Black Crystal.
Oh my god.
You are not wrong. And he goes in and shoves you, like he's shooing you away from the bar, and Bob's just cackling the whole time. And this dwarven male, he's like, if you want drinks, you can go ahead and order them from me. I am the expert here. Not currently charging shit because no one has money after the fucking city blew up. So, what do you want?
This thing you have.
All right,
I'm
strongest.
annoyed that I have to say it again.
All right, you're in piss. Got it. So,
Yes!
some for you, crazy old man.
I would like a glass of chocolate milk with some cranberries mixed in.
He kind of tilts his head and he's like, all the cranberries burned to shit.
You know, that is rather unfortunate.
Oh,
Stick
me.
with the chocolate milk.
All right, you got it. And for you, and he points to Cassie.
Just water if you have it.
All right, water. That's, I suppose, yeah, that works. And then he goes, and then it's up for you. But he turns and looks at you, Sora, and he goes, "Oh, I haven't seen you in a long time."
Right, yeah, I left for a little while.
Yeah. Last time I saw you, Lucius he was drunk off his ass. Did he ever recover from that?
Yes, he did sober up, yes.
He nods and he's like, "Good. Man of the cloth shouldn't be drinking like that, but Lucius has his own problems there." And he just kind of laughs and turns around and goes ahead and starts working on everyone's drinks. And he looks at the rest of you and he goes, "Well, for those of you who don't know, I am Egil Savage, the owner of Old Savage's Pub. You know, it's in the name, whatever and all that. Judging by the fact that you're all here, I suppose you came because of good old Holly. Is that right?"
More or less.
That gift, though. My goodness.
Soren's face when he's asking her about
About Lucius. Oh, about poor Lucius. And,
We'll be editing that in when I edit this.
yes. And Egil nods and he goes, "Well, good fucking timing for a meeting about the inclusion organization, whatever the fuck she calls it. That is not happening anymore. I have not actually seen Holly since you disappeared, Soren. So I suppose we're just going to have to make do with what we have." And he finishes making the drinks, and he goes ahead and takes a very large water skin and pours it for you, Cassie. And he goes ahead and hands you the rest of your drinks. And Crampon, he actually reaches into his pocket, pulls a couple of blueberries out, and squeezes the juice into your drink. And he's like, "I hope that'll suffice."
Hooray! People may think that blueberries are blue, but they're yellow. And then just turn away.
And Egil just kind of stares and he goes, "And here I thought I was the crazy one."
No, you ain't seen nothing yet.
That's true, he's got a lot more to offer than this.
I believe it, that's for sure. He
Oh, thank you. I believe that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Or about me. Whatever.
We met 5 seconds ago. And he just kind of rubs his temples and he goes, "No, I'm not dealing with it today. This is bullshit, and I'm not going to give in to your childish temptations." And he goes ahead and he actually pours himself a drink and goes ahead and he downs the whole cup in one gulp.
Yes.
And like,
Yes, buddy, yes.
and he just kind of lets out and like he just a large exasperated sigh. And he He goes ahead and clasps the glass on the bar, and he leans his elbow against the bar, and he's looking behind you at all the Crown's Guard coming and entering, and people shoving to get in, and like people kind of yelling at each other and getting a little violent, and some of the Crown's Guard members have to go and defuse the situation before it starts getting bad. And Egil just kind of shakes his head and he goes, "They've been trying to get in all day. I wish there was more room, but my cousin can only add so many floors before she collapses of exhaustion. Regardless, you, friends of Holly, are welcome here, at least for as long as we're staying. But I hope you enjoy your drinks, and, well, I hope you can help out if you can. If old Glenn brought you here with the Crown's Guard, I trust he sees something in you that I do not. So, don't let us down, I suppose."
Alright, I suppose.
And he nods and goes ahead and walks around from the bar, and like as he goes around, you can see he's probably about like up to your guys' waist in height, for most of you at least. And he just kind of nods and he goes, "Well,"
Like 6'10" or something. I forget the chair.
he goes, "When you're all done with your drinks, come up to the 5th floor. We're having a bit of a meeting, and since you guys are part of Holly's guild, quote unquote, I suppose you should all be present for this meeting. I will see you guys up there." And he goes and turns around and begins making his way back upstairs.
Alright, well, that's that then, and I'm gonna down my drink in one go.
Fair enough, you go ahead and do that, and yeah, it's gone. You do kind of choke a little, but then you just kind of, you're like, no, just drink past it, who cares?
It's like, yeah, and it's gone.
Yeah, pretty much. So with that being the case, just you guys are sitting here in the bar with your drinks, and you're just watching the Crown's Guard members kind of passing with people and trying to console a lot of the sobbing towns members who have very gruesome injuries now that you're looking. Like, they bring in a man whose like arm is practically dangling by a thread at this point, and like you can see exposed bone and like where his elbow is, and it's just these people have gone through quite an ordeal today. So with that being the case, as you guys are sitting down in the bar, what would you like to do?
I finish my drink very quickly and then just kind of lean back with my raven staring at people who have not yet finished their drinks.
So yeah, Raven just goes ahead and stares at all of you all creepily, just impatiently waiting for you guys.
I have not noticed anything at all, as I have been too busy pondering how could have all the cherries have burned up, but all of the alcohol is fine.
And all the blueberries are fine.
Alcohol is the thing that is flammable. This does not make sense to me at all.
I mean, hey.
And why do 2 minutes pondering this?
All right, but you also remember this building is made of wood, but it's pretty much entirely untouched by the fire.
Oh. Like, how did the Wait, you said cherries. I said cranberries.
Yeah, whatever. It's all the same.
Just for a refill.
Yeah, well, Egil is no longer at the bar. He's headed upstairs.
One myself.
I'm just taking like sips of my water, just like quietly, just like listening to the banter.
Fair enough. And like again, just Soren's Raven is just kind of staring at you guys, and as you guys are just kind of sitting there enjoying your drinks, and Matthias, you go ahead and get yourself a refill of your drink, and just continue pondering how in the world logic works. The doors to the pub swing open, and you can just hear the woman's voice, and she's just like, "Oh, excuse me, no, stop pulling, come on!" And she goes in and shoves herself into the pub, and she stumbles and nearly falls flat on her face. and she's just kind of panting, and she looks surprisingly beaten up. Like her hair is just kind of like all matted. She's very bruised, has kind of a few bloody scrapes against her skin. But looking at her, you see she is also wearing the garb of the Crown's Guard, and she goes ahead and looks up at everyone, and she goes, "What? Where did?" And she looks up at you guys at the bar, and she's like, "I could use one of those." And she goes ahead and walks around the bar and starts pouring herself a drink. And looking at her closely, she seems surprisingly energetic given the circumstances, but at the same time, you don't know whether it's energy or just impatience or what, but she's been through the ringer trying to get all these people. And she downs her drink in just a few gulps and slams it down. And looking at her closely, you can tell that this is a human woman. And she just kind of looks at all of you, and she goes, "Hell of a day, huh?" And she just kind of smiles and lets out a very weak laugh.
You can say that again.
You don't know the half of it.
"Oh, don't I?" And she kind of points at her armor, and she's like, "Do you see what I'm wearing? You know what the job is of the Crown's Guard when a calamity like this happens?" And then she just kind of, she lets out a sigh, and she's like, Sorry, I know it's not my right to snap at you guys, but it's been a day. It has been a day. So, what are you all in for?"
Stuff.
And things!
I knew someone would say that.
I killed a man.
She kind of glances at you like, "So have I. Guess we're on the same page." And like looking at her, she looks kind of short, but like she's got a very muscular build to her. Like she looks like she should not be as clumsy as she is, but she just goes in and she's kind of like spinning her glass and like kind of making it tip off the edge and just kind of catching it and continuing to spin it and catching it. And she goes, by the looks of you, I don't think you guys are rescues, are you?"
Not in the general sense of the word, no.
Do we look like animals to you?
And she points.
To be fair, we do have our
No, she points at the imp on the staff, and she goes, "That looks a hell of a lot like an animal to me." And Bob's just like, "I'm no animal. I am a demon from hell. Why can't you guys understand this? I am way more menacing than you think."
I like how he cut out. Like, just like cut out in the middle of that. I'm like,
That's all I heard.
Regardless, and then this woman, she just kind of laughs and shakes her head, and she goes, "Well, if you aren't rescues, I suppose you probably hear about the meeting that the other Crown's Guard members are holding." And she glances down at the floor, and she's just says, "What a hell of a time to get hired, huh?"
Well, you can say that again.
And she's like, "Well, I suppose if you're here for the meeting, I will be seeing you upstairs. Where do you all come from if you aren't rescues? Because if you were in the city, I'd assume you guys would have some sort of signs that you were on fire or whatever, but you all, aside from like a few scrapes or whatever, you all look fine."
Well, we got into a bit of a tussle with the creature that did things, but he didn't manage to hit any of us. I suppose we were lucky.
And she nods and she goes, yeah, I suppose things have been getting a little violent recently, but maybe some still have some semblance of sanity, hope for humanity, something that a lot of us here in the city lack right now. But regardless, that's a talk for another day." And she goes ahead and she holds her hand out to Matthias, and she goes, "The name's Janice Walker. What's yours?"
It's Matthias.
And she nods. She's like, "All right, Matthias. What about the rest of you?"
Soren.
Soren.
I get up and like position myself like like to be like with one of those sarcastic bows to like our Krempen warlock, and this is Bob.
And Bob just goes, "My name is not fucking Bob." But then he's like, "Fuck it, it's too much effort." Yes, my name is Bob.
I told you I'd get you to crack.
And he's like, "I don't crack, I do crack."
Yeah, who do you think your supplier is?
Oh my
And
god.
during this exchange, Janice is just kind of staring like,
Oh.
"You guys have got quite the duo with you." And then she looks at Cassie and she goes, "You haven't said your name yet. What is it?"
Cassie. Just Cassie.
Cassie. All right. Well, with that being the case, she goes ahead and clasps her hand together and she's like, "I suppose I will see the rest of you upstairs. So, well, ciao for now, I guess, for trying to be optimistic." And she just kind of laughs awkwardly to herself and goes ahead and trips over her own feet trying to head back up the stairs. And then she's like, "Nope, you didn't see that." She goes and darts back up the stairs.
Me.
All right then. Should we go up?
We shall.
Not much to do down here.
No.
All right. So all of you are heading back up?
Correct.
All right, fair enough. So, you guys just go ahead and gather your belongings or whatever you have with you anyway, and finally begin making your way towards this door where these staircases are. And you go ahead and walk up these staircases, and you come to the what seems to be the second floor of the building, but it is no longer a pub. It is an inn up here, and you can see kind of like a very polygonal square or staircase heading upward, and it goes ahead and heads further into the inn. And as you guys are going further, you can see kind of in slightly open doors some of the injured that they've been taking in, and there are people in Crown's Guard outfits desperately trying to mend the wounds, but without healing magic, they have no idea what to do because they have no idea where to find any clerics aside from the man you met earlier, Surge, but he is preoccupied. But you guys go ahead and head up the stairs, and you go up to the top floor, and after you passed the third floor, you get the feeling that the remaining floors weren't here initially, but they were somehow fabricated. And you go ahead and head further up, and you go into the fifth floor, and it is no longer in... they're no longer in rooms at this point, but there is a door leading to a custodial office, and you can see it's wide open because there's a pair of people just kind of gathering cleaning supplies and going and hoping that can perhaps help them with taking care of the wounded. And then beside that, you can see kind of this very large polished oak double door set that is cracked open, and you can kind of hear murmuring voices inside. You guys go ahead and head inside that room? Mm-hmm. All right. So you guys go ahead and enter, and as soon as you do, you're just greeted by this wave of voices, and inside you can see the majority of the Crown's Guard kind of standing there, like kind of fidgeting nervously, kind of talking, trying to joke amongst themselves. You can see various people in very formal wear sitting around this large rectangular table, and then you can see the faces you recognize. You can see Egil Savage sitting next to another dwarven woman who looks kind of similar to him, and around him you can see Glenn and Surge, and you can see Janice is sitting next to Surge, and she's talking to him, and you can't really hear what they're saying, but they both look very enraptured in this conversation, and they're both just kind of laughing and surprisingly cheery given the situation. And as you come in, Soren, there is a face in the crowd you recognize. You can see a man with kind of this with short cropped brown hair, and he's kind of wearing the church cloth from the Church of Giselle, and he is just kind of staring down at the ground, and his expression's unreadable, and you know that to be Ben Soltris.
Oh, Lord, help me.
So all of you go ahead and enter, and as soon as you do, a lot of the murmuring... Oh, yeah?
Kind of cut out. What?
Oh, there's just a guy in here that Soren would have recognized.
Oh, no. I heard that. It's just the last part, what you were saying.
Oh, I was just saying that as you guys are entering the room, the murmuring crowd kind of dies down, and a few heads kind of turn your way. Some Crownsguard members look at Soren with kind of like a look of familiarity, but they don't seem to really do much. And as you enter, like, and the crowd quiets down, Ben looks up, and as soon as he sees you, Soren, he kind of tilts his head with and like he kind of glances, and he smiles and waves a little bit, but then he just kind of immediately goes back to looking back at the ground.
I just stare at him.
Fair
with
enough.
this blank look in my eyes. You're dead to me, kind of a thing.
There we go.
Fair enough. And
What were you saying, Brian? You're quiet.
I stand in front of Soren to block their view.
oh, okay. All right, so you go ahead and move and block the view, and then as you guys go ahead and come in, you can see Glenn and Egil both stand up on this rectangular table, and Egil just goes ahead and shouts, "All right, everybody, shut up. We will begin the meeting." And the crowd goes ahead and dies down. And he looks at you guys who just entered, and he goes, "Well, I'm glad Holly's friends could join us. Please, go ahead and find a seat." And with that, we'll go ahead and take a break. We'll reconvene in about 10 minutes.
Alright, so that'll be end of part 1. Keep tuned for part 2.
Alrighty.
Hopefully I will actually edit that.
Fair enough. Alright, we'll be back at 8:15.
Alright, I'm gonna be right back and make some tea.
Music was way louder than I expected it to be.
I'm gonna go get water.
Good idea.
It's steak.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna get food after this.
Good idea.
Because I can feel a headache starting to set in.
Hmm.
And I know it's not water.
All right. Made myself a nice cup of tea.
Nice.
Oh, that's what I forgot to do. Just download.
Resuming.
What?
It's stuff happening. What's
Oh yeah. I was waiting for everyone to be back and ready before going and starting again. So yeah.
for sure?
All right.
How
Cool.
many people? Oh, is everyone back?
I think so.
Oh
In
yeah.
fact, I am.
All right. Cool. So.
Let me just start the stream back up.
All right. Cool.
And we are live. Welcome back, my weirdos.
Yeah. Act 2 of Chapter 3. So, you guys go ahead and get settled in to sit around this rectangular table, and there seem to have been actually some chairs set up for you guys. There are 4 chairs across from the way where Glenn and Egil were sitting. So you guys go ahead and pull up those chairs and sit down, and as you do, Glenn nods and he goes, "Thank you for coming. So, Egil updated me on the matter a little bit, and he mentioned the whole situation with what was supposed to happen with Holly, and well, we just haven't seen her since, well, it's been about a week, more than a week now. It's been a while." And he looks down at Serge, and Serge nods and he goes, "Oh yes, it's been a while, yeah." And he just kind of trails off and continues whispering to Janice, and they're just kind of having their own conversation. And Glenn kind of glares at them, and then the moment he does, both of them just kind of sit up straight, like as if they practically feel his stare. And Glenn clears his throat, and he's still standing on top of the table with Egil, but the height difference is almost comical, where Glenn is this somewhat tall man. Egil is this dwarf that's about just barely below his waist in terms of height. But Egil, he just kind of looks up and he's like, "All right, listen up, you fuckers. My cousin cannot hold the inn much longer. To make this short, we are going to be relocating." And you kind of hear kind of grumbles of complaints among the Crown's Guard members, and he goes, "Yes, yes, that will mean carrying the wounded even more, and I know you're all exhausted, but we cannot afford to waste any more time. My poor cousin," and he goes and points to the dwarven woman who was sitting next to him, and giving her a closer look, you can kind of see her eyes are closed, and she's been murmuring under her breath, and she has her hands kind of folded, almost in like a prayer-like position, but she has grown quite pale, and it doesn't. Yeah.
Just a real quick side note. When you were bringing up that how he'd have to relocate, I was half expecting like him to like pull a switch on like a lever or something and like have the whole building move.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, he would do that under different circumstances, but and see, Egil points to this woman who he's who he addresses as his cousin, and she kind of looks up at him, and she just kind of smiles weakly, and she goes, "Oh no, don't worry about me. I." And she goes in and kind of catches her breath, and she's like, "I can hold this long enough, at least for everyone to move the injured and sick onto carts." And then you hear Janice's voice, and she goes, so if you don't mind me asking, where exactly are we relocating to? The whole city is ablaze, and there aren't really any safe ways to any other districts." And Glenn nods, and he goes, yes, we are leaving the city entirely. We will be heading north, and we will make our way towards the village Hooded River, which lines the border between Orlivia and Washorek. And hopefully they will be able to take our sick and injured, but in the meantime, an old friend of mine, a friend named Maggie, she has an outpost set up for everyone, and she is actually waiting for us as we speak. And Janice nods, and she goes, okay. And then she goes ahead and looks at you guys, and she goes, so, I know you're all in the meeting and stuff, but what is your involvement with all of this? And you kind of hear other voices among the crowd kind of murmuring and nodding agreement. Yeah, like, who are these guys? Like, what? Like,
We were kind of hoping you guys were going to tell us, because
and
not really anybody's been answering our questions for a while now.
as soon as you do, Egil nods and he goes, yes, that is my job. My apologies. Everyone, our friends here are part of the inclusion collaboration started by our good friend Holly Beckstrom. And, well, before the explosion happened, they were going to be part of our crew. We were going to have them do numerous tasks that we would deem unfit for the Crown's Guard here, and the Crown's Guard, like, you can kind of hear members of the Crown's Guard kind of murmuring, almost like offended by his remark, and he just kind of laughs, and you can even kind of you can even kind of hear Serge laughing, and he's like, yeah, he's not wrong, and then Egil puts his hands behind his back and just kind of closes his eyes solemnly, and he says, but unfortunately, plans have changed. Like we mentioned earlier, we haven't seen Holly in a long time, and, well, we're hoping the four of you, and he looks at you guys, will join our council, at least temporarily, until we can get everyone to safety. What do you say? Are you guys okay with this? If not, that's perfectly fine. But, we could use all the help we can get.
It's not like I've got anything else to do.
Well, follow.
I'm for it.
Jeez!
And then you actually hear a few, like, snickers coming from the crowd, and then Janice kind of stares at you, and then she looks up at Glenn, and she's like, I like him. and
Just get like a big old smile on my face, like, yeah!
and Bob just whispers in your ear, she's lying, nobody likes you.
I know!
And then even Glenn is now finally smiling, and for the first time since you guys have met him, which hasn't necessarily been super long, but you guys have been walking for a good amount of time to get to this place. You actually see kind of a genuine smile, and he's just kind of amused by the banter, and he goes, yes, it's always good to have the crazy old man on board. Right, Egil? And he goes ahead and kind of nudges Egil, and he's like, oh no, from my understanding, this man is way crazier than I am.
Indeed!
And then his cousin goes ahead and stands up, and she clears her throat, and she goes, if I may. And Egil's like, oh, yes, of course. And so his cousin stands up, and kind of giving her a closer look, you can see she's about his same height. She's got like this very thick silver hair that's kind of braided and tossed over her shoulder, and she's kind of like holding it at her side, and she's clad in the robes that look similar to what the robes of the members of the Church of Giselle would wear, but they look much thicker, and they're adorned with gold and silver decoration along the she looks at the four of you and she goes, so it is my understanding that one of you is friends of Egil, right?
In a fashion, yes.
And Egil's like, acquaintances, we help drunk people, I suppose. And his cousin nods and she goes, well, it's nice to meet you. My name is Kaldri Soren, or Savage. My apologies. uh, I suppose you could say I'm the one responsible for this meeting. I wanted to call everyone here because she closes her mouth and Agiel kind of leans over and whispers something in her ear, and then she's like, but I don't know. And he goes, no, it's okay. And Caldry nods, and she's like, all right, well, I had an idea that something like this would happen, and well, my magic only knows so many bounds. I could only protect this inn, and we had so many wounded that we had to make more room, and I used as much of my energy as I can, and I made this gathering room. But as soon as I realized that this was the extent of what I could do, I knew we couldn't stay here. This is the only intact building in the whole city, and Egil, like you can see, she's kind of starting to hyperventilate a little, and Egil kind of pats her back, and finally she takes in a deep breath and lets it out, and she goes, I'm glad to have more people on board. So now that we're all here, why don't the four of you introduce yourselves to the entire council here?
May as well start since some of you know me already anyway. My name is Soren, Literature Giselle.
And you kind of glance over and you can see Ben out of the corner of your eye, and he kind of glances up at you as you say your name, but then he just kind of looks away, like he isn't really staring so much as he is just kind of looking suspiciously every now and then.
That's Matthias, and I used to be a part of the Church of Olymp.
And everyone just nods, and they're all like, you can kind of hear a few people kind of murmur the name Matthias, like a bit, but nothing more, and then they just quickly fall silent.
Oh, crap, I'm trying to remember which one I was from again. I'm pretty sure it was little. I step up, take a quick bow. Our Crimpin Warlock! I hail from Livia.
Uh-huh. And as soon as you say that, you can kind of hear a few voices go, Our Rampin? And then you can see Janice look up at you, and she's like, I know I liked you! I've read about you!
Oh, have you now?
Yeah, you're in all the history books in the castle. Freaking Garen and Lenora talked endlessly about your accomplishments, and she kind of looks at your beard and she goes, "That was from the day that happened, wasn't it?"
Oh, that is
Over
correct.
to Soren and silently go, he had accomplishments?
Soren had just started to take a drink from her cup and just kind of like quietly and sort of subtly spit it back into the cup.
I was half expecting a spit take.
Oh my gosh! And then freaking Caldry turns towards Cassie and she goes, "And what about you?" And you can actually see people peering at your shield a little bit, and their eyes just kind of widening, and they start like whispering amongst themselves.
I stand and I go. Wasn't planning on doing this so soon, but I'm Cassandra, former princess of Liadon.
I'm sorry, what now?
I'm a former princess. That's the...
Yeah, and as soon as she says that, like, everyone starts murmuring a little louder, and everyone's like, and then And then you can see Egil look at you, and he's like, "I knew you looked familiar. My apologies, Princess, but we've heard word of the incident. Is what they say true? Did you do it?" And like the room falls silent as soon as he says that.
The things you have heard are incorrect.
Go ahead and make a persuasion check.
I am intrigued.
Really quick, before she rolls,
Hmm?
can I roll an insight check for Soren to see if this is an important question for her to convince them of? Like, do I sense that this is important that they believe her?
Alright, yeah, definitely go ahead and roll insight.
18.
Alright. Yeah, you can tell this is important. This is...
Then I am going to subtly twist the strands of the world and give her a natural 20.
Oh! Awesome, alright, so... Yeah, you see Egil, he just kind of looks and he nods, and like the room is still completely silent, but he's like, "Very well. My condolences to your father. I hope that this incident gets resolved, and that perhaps you may be able to go home one day." But, and he looks around at the crowd and he's like, "This does not leave this room. Does everyone understand?" And everyone, and like, all the Crown's Guard, like, in unison go, "Yes, sir!"
Sir!
Like, super delayed. And then,
One of my favorite jokes in like the is just like the sir.
What are you, the brainwashed Goombas and Bowser's Inside Story?
oh my gosh, dude.
Knows what I'm talking about.
Video game references. But, and then as soon as they do, like, the room falls silent again. And Janice is kind of staring at you, and she's like, "We have fucking royalty here? What the fuck?" And then, like, and Serge just kind of laughs, and then Glenn just kind of ignores them, and he goes, "That does not change our situation, but regardless, we are glad to have you here. With that being the case," and he goes ahead and he nods at Cauldry, and Cauldry goes in and goes towards you, Cassandra, and she kind of walks towards you, and like on the table, she is only slightly taller than you when sitting down, but as she goes ahead and looks at you and then looks at the rest of you, and she goes, "Yes, they should be more than sufficient to at least help out with the effort." And then she goes ahead and backs away, and then Glenn clears his throat and speaks up, and he goes, "All right, now that we have introductions out of the way, I believe it's appropriate to get to the situation that matters." So he goes ahead and he gets back off the table and sits down, and Egil and Cauldry go ahead and follow suit. And then Glenn goes ahead and begins speaking, and he goes, "As you all know, this is not a permanent fixture. We will be heading towards my friend Maggie's outpost, just a few miles north of the city, and we will go ahead and make sure we rest there. We will have people serving food there in the evening for at least dinner before we all go ahead and turn in for the night, but I just wanted to go ahead and talk about something important." And he goes ahead and he actually looks at Ben, and looking at Ben, he has a bit of a worried look on his expression. And then he goes ahead and looks back at the four of you, and he goes, "As I'm sure you guys are well aware of, the king and queen of the province have gone missing. The king has gone off to God's nowhere, and the queen, well," he goes ahead and gestures towards Ben, and then he gestures towards Soren, and he goes, "Well, the two of you were there the day she vanished." And Ben nods, and he goes, Yes, it was Elysium, I believe. Was it? And he looks over at you, Soren. He goes, she vanished into Elysium.
Like you need to ask me.
And he nods, and uh, he actually goes ahead and stands up on the table and looks around at the people. And glancing around, you can actually see that a lot of the people around you do not like Ben. They are likely aware of what he's done. And
Yep.
yeah. And he glances around at everyone and he's like, well, trust me, I do not want to be here. But, well, circumstances call for it. And he looks over at Cauldry and he goes, well, Princess Lenora has disappeared into Elysium, so we have called it upon the two of us to go ahead and enter Elysium ourselves, along with any who wish to come with us and search for her. And then, as he's saying this, Glenn goes up and goes and stands on the table next to him, and he goes, "And we will be sending a search party for King Garen as soon as we reach Hooded River, because, well, we've received word that his sister Sabrina lives there, and she may have a tip on where he might have gone. And so, once we reach the outpost, we will go ahead and be splitting our groups up and determining who will go with whom. Who will go with Ben and Cauldry to the world of Elysium to search for the princess, or Queen, my apologies. I'm not used to what happened to the previous king and queen yet. And then the rest of us will go and search for King Garen around Unisilad and beyond, if necessary. We don't have to make that decision for the time being, but we did want to bring that up to the rest of you, so you have some expectation of what we will be doing. And the four of you," and he goes ahead and looks at you guys, and he says, "You all may not have been involved with the king and queen of Olivia. You, Princess Cassandra, you know not the affairs of our province anyway, at least as far as I'm aware, but we do ask that you help in our cause. And seeing as you have joined our council, we trust you will make not the right decision, but a decision that you find fit." And then he goes ahead and turns towards the rest of the group, and he says, "Now, gather your belongings. We will be gathering behind the castle, and we will go ahead and take our carts towards the outpost. We will meet there in about 30 minutes. And then you can kind of hear the Crown's Guard members kind of moaning and complaining, and he's like, 30 minutes on the dot or we will leave you behind. And then they kind of go quiet, and he goes, all right, meeting dismissed. And he goes ahead and jumps off the table, and the crowd begins kind of dispersing. And with that, what do you guys do?
I immediately turn to Cassandra and say, right, you owe us a pretty big explanation.
Oh, yes. That is the understatement of the century.
Look, a lot has happened. Look, a lot has happened in the last, kind of like few days that we've known each other. I just didn't think it would be important to bring up the fact that things have happened.
I'm insane, but even I know one does not mess around with royalty.
Especially not royalty who bring around big flying men who burn up cities.
See, she gets it.
I didn't bring that man.
But you knew the people who were in the woods. You're the one that told me to run.
It was just... okay.
And you think it's a coincidence that those flying men who you obviously recognized in fashion just happened to be here in the woods with him?
Look. I've been framed for something that I didn't do. And yeah, maybe I brought the people with me or whatever.
Right,
But
I'm not saying that you had any hand in the men arriving. I'm saying you owe us an explanation for what the fuck's going on.
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, to be honest.
Who were are the people in the woods? Who are the flying things? What do you have to do with them? I'm sure there's more you're not telling us, Princess.
I can't explain right now. Because.
Can't or won't?
Can't. Can't.
Ask you a question, Soren. Who the hell cares?
And Bob goes ahead and glances at Matthias. He goes, "Well, some of us care. I find this a fascinating story. Death, despair, it's all what my heart wants."
Okay,
And then
Monokuma.
like shake the staff, like you shut the fuck up.
You gave me baby demon syndrome. Whatever it is, I don't care. It's terminology.
Wait, what'd you say? Wait, what?
I said baby demon syndrome and I meant to say shaken demon syndrome.
Baby demon syndrome. I've heard it all.
Whatever, it's canon now.
Absolutely.
And as you guys are having this conversation, Serge goes up and walks up to you guys, and he goes, "Well, I can't help but overhearing this because, well, you've got freaking royalty with you. Like, you were there for the Eastrian incident. Like, what's it like in the city? Like, what?" And then you can hear Glenn walking up behind him, and he just goes, "All right, that's enough, Serge." And he goes ahead and pats Glenn on the shoulder, or Serge on the shoulder. My goodness, I'm getting all the names mixed up. But and then Glenn looks at you, and he just kind of glances at all of you, and he looks at our Krampin and kind of looks at each of his eyes individually, since they're looking in different directions, and
At
he
like constant times, like it's never like they're never in one position for a certain amount of time. They're like usually moving.
Exactly, yeah. And he just looks at you guys and he goes, "Well, it's been a long day for, well, pretty much everyone here. Do you have any belongings on the cart you guys came in that you would like to bring before we go ahead and depart?"
All I have is on me.
Same. It's not like I had much of a chance to grab anything before I left.
No, I have all my things.
And he nods and he's like, "All right, fair enough. So, like I said, we will be meeting just outside the castle, and he goes ahead and looks at his wrist, and there's nothing there. And he says, "About 20 minutes now, so I will go ahead and see all of you there. Feel free to grab some more drinks if you want. Old Egil might get mad, but I'll foot the bill if he cares that much." And then he just kind of looks at you guys, and he's like, "Again, I cannot thank you enough for joining this. We, like we were saying, we need as many people as we can get here."
I'm kind of just like, I'm quiet at this point and kind of going through a crisis because too many people know who I am now.
All right, and then with that, Glenn goes ahead and leaves, and you can see Serge just kind of watching him as he leaves, and he smiles and he's like, "Glenn's a good guy. You guys can trust him."
Hope you're right.
And Serge nods and he just says, "I mean, at this point, we gotta trust who we can. We're all in this together. I suppose you can say. Just, no dying."
When you've got a personality like mine, it's not the issue of trusting others. It's getting others to trust you.
And Serge laughs.
Well, before my accident, anyway.
And Serge just nods and he's like, "Well, pretty much everyone in the city knows who you are, Crampin. I think no one's gonna have any trouble trusting you. Well, for the most part."
Right, yeah, speaking of that, who the fuck are you? Why is everybody here someone important that everybody else knows about?
Are you referring to me?
Well, they were saying that they all know ya, so yeah, I am.
Ah, my understanding, I am a bit iffy with the details due to the memory loss. However, but to my understanding, I used to be a great powerful warlock. However, some of my spells have erased my mind. Yes, I have been around for a very long time, helping when I can. I am a very good friend of the royal family.
And then Bob comments and he's like, he also serves them shit food.
Hey, Laura. Sorry, not Laura. Lenora likes my muffins. You're not taking that away from me, you imp bastard.
Well, you're ignorant and you don't know what the people around you think.
This is also accurate information. However, I don't care.
And Serge just nods and he goes, well, hopefully you can help us find the royal family, or what's left of it, that is. We have no idea where the new king has gone. And our Krampin, you know this new king to be King Christopher Alexander, a legendary hero spoken of among the province of Livia and even beyond. And Matthias, you've even heard whispers of King Chris as well. And Serge just kind of nods and he goes, man, I wish Chris were here now. He could resolve all this in a snap.
That guy was a badass.
And and then you hear a voice behind him, and he goes, and she just goes, "Right you are." And Janice goes ahead and kind of slings her arm around around Serge's shoulders, and she looks a little faded, and she just kind of looks at the rest of you guys, and she goes, "You guys are awesome." and Serge.
I'll have whatever she is smoking.
and then Janice goes, "Who said anything about smoking?" And she goes ahead and pulls out a flask and like kind of waves it around, and like the flask is like the size of her head. And she just kind of goes ahead and slides it back into like this leather pouch she has strapped to her back. And she goes, "Hey, let me let you in on a little secret." And she goes ahead and pokes Serge in the chest, but like way harder than she intends to, and like basically shoves him back. And she goes, "Serge likes Glenn." And Serge just goes ahead and throws her off his shoulders, and he's like, "Don't listen to her. She's inebriated." And he goes ahead and turns around and kind of scratches the back of his head, and he looks at something, nothing in particular on the ground, and goes ahead and just kind of walks out of the room. And you look over at Janice, and she's on the ground just kind of giggling. And she looks at the rest of you, and she goes, he's... yeah, Serge." And she goes ahead and just kind of collapses onto her back, and like a couple other Crown's Guard members go ahead and lift her up, and she's just kind of looking around. She's like, "Why are there two of you? Wait." And then they could just go ahead and carry her off. And here you guys are, just among the last of a crowd that hasn't really dispersed. So what do you guys do?
I raise my hands and like both of my hands like up in the air, like in hopes to get like a cheer.
And you do hear like almost like some sort of like.
Just like one single person in the background just go like it's just dead silent. Just one person goes, "Woo!"
No, it's more like a fraternity group, like a bunch of guys like, "Ooh, oh crap, Ben! Woo, woo, woo!"
Hell yeah!
and,
I just sit there just taking it in.
and then you see Cauldry and Egil walk up, and Egil's like, "Oh, what the fuck are you lot still doing here? Come on, we've got less than half an hour to go to the front of the castle, and that's a bit of a long walk."
Right.
But the adoring public.
And then Egil goes in and pats your back, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry, this adoring public is following us all the way to the outpost."
Excellent.
And then with that, Cauldry, she is looking particularly sickly, and she just goes, "Well, I can't hold this area up much longer. If you guys wouldn't mind, could you guys leave?
Oh,
Yeah."
right, yeah, sorry.
And as she's saying this, Agil's going ahead and kind of shooing everyone else out, and like along with you guys. And you go ahead and leave, and as soon as you make your way to the third floor, you can the staircase that was above you immediately vanishes and just becomes a wooden ceiling above you. And the rest of the Crown's Guard are filing their way out and heading out of the pub. And you guys go ahead and follow. And looking around, the pub is mostly empty now, aside from people who are like gathering the wounded and heading outside. Do you guys go ahead and follow them outside and towards the castle?
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. So you guys go ahead and follow outside, and the smoke seems to have gotten worse, though the flames appear to have died down, at least in this immediate vicinity. So as you're walking, like people are just kind of coughing and lifting up the bottoms of their shirts to kind of cover their nose and mouths, and they're all heading towards this area behind the castle. And you guys spend a few minutes going ahead and walking towards there, kind of surrounded by all these people. And a lot of the Crown's Guard members seem to have gotten a little more energetic after seeing their celebrity Ark Rampin there, and so they're kind of starting to talk a little more energetically, and they actually seem happy for once. But looking at this group, Ark Rampin and Soren, both of you recognize that this is barely a fraction of the Crown's Guard. Like, there are probably about 20 of them left out of what used to be hundreds. And they're just doing what they can to get as many survivors as they can. And,
As just 20 soldiers just for anything's not ideal.
Exactly. And I mean, this is freaking Olivia, one of the biggest provinces in the entire continent. So having only 20 Crown's Guard members left, at least within the vicinity of the city, is, as you know, not good. And it's just, everyone just kind of spends a moment, like you see Glenn, like he's kind of giving orders and making sure people put the wounded on like certain carts, and making sure that the less wounded civilians go ahead and get organized on other carts. You can see that there are way more carts like with horse that are drawn by horses than there are soldiers, and they're all helmed by all sorts of people, goblins, like pretty much anyone who could control one of these carriages or wagons are preparing to go ahead and take everyone to this outpost that Glenn had mentioned. And as you guys go up, he looks at the four of you, and he goes, "Well, given that you came in on your own carriage, I trust you can control one yourself, yes?" And he looks at Matthias, who he recognized as the one controlling the carriage initially.
Matthias?
I was yelling at my dog. What?
Oh, yeah, no worries. Glenn just looks at you and he goes, "Given that you rode the carriage into town, I trust that you can control your own if we were head to the outpost. Am I correct?" I'm sorry, you cut out. What was that?
Is correct.
All right. And he nods and goes ahead and he leads you guys towards an open cover wagon. This one is not like the one you guys came in that was covered. This one is it's kind of like a wooden bed with like guardrails along the sides and an open back, but there's nothing above you or on your sides to protect you from the elements necessarily. But there is a horse, and there's enough room for you guys. So Glenn goes in and leads you to this wagon, and he goes, "No need to worry about directions or anything. Just follow the crowd, and we will go ahead and take you in the right direction." And he goes ahead and kind of pats the horse on this carriage, or wagon, I suppose, and goes ahead and continues issuing orders and making sure everyone else is gathered correctly. So, what do you guys do?
gonna hop on the wagon.
I'll hop on the side and just hang off the edge
Fair enough.
with my old brittle bones.
Alright, and then, see how with that being the case, you guys get on the wagon, and Matthias, you go ahead and helm the front since you're the appointed wagon driver, and, with that, you just kind of sit there and wait for the rest of the Crown's Guard and all the civilians to head forward, and then, two more walk up to your wagon, and it's, Janice and Serge, and Serge is kind of dragging Janice by this point. She's like half on the floor, and she's just kind of like holding on around his waist, and she's just kind of singing "Serge likes Glenn, Serge likes Glenn," and then Serge looks at the rest of you, and he goes, "I hope you guys don't mind if we join you."
Nah.
And then he's like, "All right," and he goes ahead and kind of pulls Janice's arms away, and kind of lifts her up, and then she goes, "Hey, do you think lobsters are mermaids to scorpions?" And and then Serge is like, "That's enough." And then he goes ahead and like lays her down, and
Like I have like little magic that I just like put up near my head, like mini explosions. Mind blown.
and Janice kind of stares at you with wide eyes while you're doing that. She's like, "Whoa!" And then Serge lays her down on the side, and he's like, "All right, that's enough. Go ahead and go to sleep. We'll be at the outpost soon enough." And she's like, "Ah, yes, sleepy time." And she immediately passes out.
Somebody's taking the train to Sleepytime Junction.
All right, and with that being the case, you kind of sit there and wait. A few minutes go by. It's definitely over the half hour that Glenn issued everyone to go, but they're finally bringing in the last stragglers, and you can see just this massive field of carriages and people surrounding you, and they're all kind of crowded around the ruins of the Church of Giselle, and then Soren, you kind of see Ben get on a carriage somewhat close to you guys, and he kind of looks up at all of you, and he goes,
I narrow my eyes.
and as you do
I
that,
can't see because I'm wearing a mask and I forgot. My raven narrows its eyes.
yeah, there we go. So your Raven knows, and like he opens his mouth to speak, but as soon as he sees that, he like his mouth just kind of goes agape, and he avoids eye contact and turns back around and just pretends you aren't there. And then finally, you, as the last of the people in front of you kind of board their carriages and wagons, you hear Glenn's. You hear a loud command from Glenn. You can't necessarily understand what it means, but at once you hear the snap of all these reins around you, and the horses begin moving forward. Matthias, go ahead and make an animal handling check.
Oh no.
Let me just do that.
Don't break the cart.
That's a nat one.
Oh.
Oh no.
That's disappointing.
So as soon as you go ahead and snap the reins, the horses don't really do anything, but then you see Glenn quickly run up along the side, and he goes ahead and kind of gently whispers into the horse's ear, and then the horse just kind of like does a and like almost like nods, and then kind of begins trotting along with the rest of the crowd. And then Glenn looks up at you, Matthias, and he goes, "Don't worry, he'll get used to handling these things."
Luck, maybe.
And he just kind of waves at you guys and heads back to his carriage. Like, these horses aren't moving particularly fast. They're all going at a bit of a hastily leisurely pace. Like, they're definitely trying to get out of the city, but they're in no rush. And you guys go ahead and make your way. The wagon is a little bumpy. Like, the wheels do not feel as sturdy as they were on the carriage you arrived in, but you assume it's sturdy enough given that you're not like straining it particularly. So you guys make your way along with the about well over 100 wagons around you, as you can tell, and you finally make your way beyond the city. The smoke doesn't go away for a while, but you go ahead and, as you do, finally go about a mile and a half. You are.
I just want to say real quick, something that I've noticed like when it comes to stories. See, the way he keeps saying like he keeps bringing up the smoke like it's important. So now I'm getting freaking Persona 4 vibes. Like, should I be worried about this smoke?
Nah, it's a burning city, man. There's a lot of smoke.
It just gives Matthias nostalgia because it reminds him of the Church of Olymp.
Yeah, fair enough. So you guys finally get out of the smoke, and looking outside, the sky is perfectly clear, but it is very dark blue, and the moon is already coming in from the east, and it is well past nighttime. There are some wisps of smoke kind of lining the sky, but not much. The this kind of herd you guys are in continues moving forward, and you can just like all you can really hear is the sound of the wind and the wheels turning of all of the wagons around you and all the horses' hooves against the grass. And you have officially left the city of Livia behind. And as you head into this just vast open grassland, is there anything you guys want to do while you're just on this ride for a little while longer?
Just rest, probably.
Yeah,
Spent
can we
this
mark this
entire
as a
time-
It's on the road.
Yeah, sleeping.
can we mark this as a long rest?
No, this is more like a. You guys are only really. This is like about a 5 mile ride, so it's not quite a long rest, but it is a 5 hour ride. My apologies. So it's not quite a long rest, but you can mark 5 hours off of rest. But you will be able to properly sleep soon. I will say that.
Okay.
Alright, sweet.
So you guys go ahead and continue along the way, and Serge is just kind of sitting by Janice, like kind of feeling her forehead with his hand and like making sure she's doing all right. And as he is, he just kind of looks up at the sky, and now that you're out of the smoke, you can see just this perfectly starry sky, and you can pretty much see all of them, since there aren't really any lights, save for a few of the wagons up front with like rather large torches to light the way for everyone else, and the moonlight. So you can see pretty much every star in the sky right now, and the Surge just kind of looks up, and he goes, huh. Never thought I'd miss the nighttime sky after only a day being submerged in smoke.
That star owes me money!
and Bob looks up and he goes, I thought that star was in hell. And then and and Surge just kind of looks up and he's like, you know, I always knew you were an odd duck, but now I know you're just an odd lemur.
God, you know what? Way to freaking play that in, bravo. Like, I was just about to make a smart-ass remark, and then you said that, I'm like, oh, great, now you just freaking shut me up.
I will be right back. I heard a weird noise outside and need to go investigate.
Oh,
I
alright.
can't relate to that.
And
Well,
then,
I live alone. Like, of course I hear weird noises all the time that freaking spooks me.
of course. And then, so, like, as you're just kind of remarking, Surge just kind of looks at Bob and he goes, are you really from hell? And Bob just kind of scoffs and he's like, huh, sure feels like it with this old man.
Hey, I bet your life improved once you met me.
He's like, oh no, my life got a lot worse. But you are a valuable asset, for you have kept me alive this long.
Okay, but I do have one thing to say to you, Mr. Bobo. Can you say your life has been boring?
And you actually kind of see him, like, his eyes kind of like his eyebrows kind of lift up, and he's a little surprised by the remark, and he goes, "Touche, Mr. Warlock, touche indeed."
That's twice in one day, Mr. Bubbo.
And then, like, you could kind of hear a sound. You see Janice kind of stirring in her sleep, and she's like, "Hey, are we there yet?" And then Serge is like, "You sound surprisingly sober." And she goes ahead and sits up, and she's kind of clutching her forehead, and she's like, "Yeah, I have a fast metabolism." And she goes ahead and looks at you and or Crampon and Bob, and she goes, "When did they get here?" And then
I thought you knew me.
she's like, "I do, but we're on a wagon now. It's night. I can breathe." And I've got. And then she looks over at Matthias and she goes, "Hey driver, how long?"
I'd say another 4 hours and 45 minutes.
And she just sighs and she's like, like collapses back onto her back. But the moment she does, she like winces and clutches her head, and she's like, "Son of a bitch!" And she goes ahead and pulls out her gigantic flask, and she's about, like, you can see her about to chuck it over the wagon and outside. But, like, Serge quickly grabs her wrist, and he's like, "No, not while everyone's around." And then she's like, "But littering isn't illegal when you're not in the city." And he's like, "No, I don't mean that." And he goes ahead and
Not how littering works.
he kind of gestures around to, like, the people you're surrounded by. Like, you're surrounded by over 100 wagons, and he's like, "If you throw that, one of those wagons could, trip over it, and you know, we already have enough wounded people as is. We don't need any more." And Janice is like,
Give it to me, I'll fucking drink it.
and Janice is like,
Yeah, plus the horses have a drinking problem. We're trying to get them to wean off the alcohol.
everyone
Weird
just.
spot to come back into.
I've been here this whole time. How do you think I
We're
feel?
following that.
Anybody want to explain what the fuck?
It was just. I feel like that doesn't necessarily need context, but
No, I think it's funnier without.
Okay, all right, cool.
yeah. And then Janice just kind of scoffs, and she's like, "Such a party pooper," and she goes ahead and hands her flask to Matthias.
Swing and look at the road.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, you're quiet.
Swing and look at the road.
Oh, okay. And then looking ahead of you, you can't necessarily see the road because you've got like a ton of people in front of you, but you do see that they are kind of drawing to they're kind of slowing down a little bit up ahead. And as you follow along, eventually all the carts, all the wagons finally come to a halt, and behind you, you can see Glenn get off of his wagon, and he goes ahead and walks forward, and before him, you can see a kind of like a short but very muscular-looking half-orc female with kind of long black hair with purple at the tips, and she's got like a very blue-gray kind of complexion, and she and Glenn kind of look at each other, and she turns and looks at all of you, and she goes, "So you must be the survivors of the Livia assassination, whatever you want to call it. Sorry, English is my first language." And then, like, everyone just kind of nods in agreement, and Glenn goes, "This is my friend Maggie Heraldine. She is the one that we will be staying with for a while. She came from Livia, but she will gladly help us maintain a safe camping area while we make our way northward towards Hooded River." And Maggie nods, and she goes, "It's nice to meet y'all. I suppose might as well just lay your wagons down and rest. We've got some people cooking up some food. We'll make sure we get some plates passed around, and I hope y'all have more or less a good time? I don't know. And she kind of looks at Glenn as if it's for approval. It's like, is this an appropriate time for a good time? And Glenn's like, who cares? And and Maggie's like, all right, I'll be back for food with all y'all. And then she goes ahead and walks towards the front, and you can kind of hear murmurs around you as everyone goes ahead and gets out of their wagons, and they begin going and heading forward. Glenn turns towards all of you after Maggie has gone and left, and he says, I'll probably introduce you four to her at a later time. But feel free to come with us. We will be having a drink up at the actual campgrounds, if you don't mind following.
We're gonna get food.
Alcohol.
No.
And Serge goes ahead and lifts Janice up, and she's like, "No, stop, I'm sober enough." And she looks at all of you, and like she's still kind of wobbling. She still looks kind of faded, but it's more like annoyance than being drunk at this point. She's like, "Well, I guess I'll see all you crazy party people at the front." And she goes ahead and walks off the wagon and just completely trips and falls flat on her face. And she's like, "None of you saw that? None of you saw that." And she goes ahead and starts just...
You guys call me a
I
terror.
didn't technically see it. So totally wrong.
I was just about to say, there's only one of us here that's blind.
Fair enough. And then with that, Serge goes ahead and stands up, and he's all...
I
Well-
only partly saw it. I'm just cross-eyed.
Serge just goes, "Well, I suppose I'll be seeing you guys up at the front. Well, it's about time we all got rest." It's, he looks up at the sky and he's like, I'd say it's about 1:30 in the morning at this point. Or, no, I could be mistaken. And then you hear Janice go, "You're not good at telling the time, asshole." And she goes ahead and continues walking forward. And then Serge is like, what? Whatever, you have a dumb face. And he goes and runs after her.
Right? They've got some low charisma scores.
Alright, so now you guys are just kind of here in your carriage and everything is halted. So do you go ahead and follow the crowd up north?
Yeah.
Alright, so you go ahead and head up north towards this campground, and the closer you get, you can actually hear fire crackling, and kind of in the near distance, I suppose, to provide an oxymoron here, you can see a rather large fire burning as you head forward, and Sword, make a wisdom saving throw. No, I'm totally kidding. But as you guys go forward, you can see all sorts of rather large cloth tents pitched up, and as you get closer, you also notice that they don't really have...
Sorry, did you say clock tents?
Oh, cloth.
Oh, okay. I thought you said clock. I'm like,
Clock
What?
tents. Yeah, and a tent's made of clocks. Imagine that. But,
I'd be surprised.
right. They don't really have any roofs on them, but they do have, like, 4 walls and, like, a flap you can enter and exit from, and you can hear a bunch...
2 hands, one to tell the minutes, one to tell the hours.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can hear a bunch of Crown's Guard members kind of drunkenly singing to themselves, and you can hear the sizzling and like popping of cooking bacon out in the distance, and you can like the aroma of just all sorts of baked goods like hit you the moment you kind of arrive at this campground. You got bread, you've got bacon, sausage, egg, like you can smell pretty much.
Smoke hand, like going to like into our nose, like yes, come investigate the food.
Yeah, more or less. But it's you don't see where the food is, but you do definitely smell it. And as you get into this campground, you can see people who are on carriages going ahead and reuniting, like running up to kind of reunite with family or friends that they didn't think survived all this, and they're just embracing and talking, and as you're passing you can see people telling all these wild stories of what they were doing during this explosion, and going forward you can kind of see a bunch of children like wrapping themselves in their jackets, kind of sitting close to this big fire in the center of this campground, while some of the adults are coming in, like kind of comforting the younger ones who are crying, and some of the teenagers are kind of getting together and talking about the situation. And just from what you can see, they're just a bunch of people trying to help each other through this tough situation they're in. And going forward, you do finally make it to the tables. There are a bunch of wooden tables set up kind of around the camp's perimeter, and you can see a bunch of the Crowns Guard are happily drinking. Janice, one of them, of course. And you go ahead and you can see Egil and Cauldry actually being the ones serving the drinks. And Egil kind of waves at you guys as you approach, and he goes, "Well, it's good to see you all in one piece." And Cauldry bows, and she goes, "I appreciate you all coming."
What's next for us then?
And Egil nods, and he's like, "That's the question, isn't it? Well, for now, we just plan on hunkering down here for the night before moving forward. It is quite late. We've all had a rough day, so drink up, eat up, and then Maggie will go ahead and lead you to your tents as soon as you are ready."
Oh, I am more than ready, trust me.
And he nods, and he's like, "All right, I could go get her for you." And he looks at Cauldry, and he's like, "Do you think you can handle the drinks?" And she's like, "Oh, yes, I'm fine. And he goes ahead and walks away, and Cauldry is just kind of serving drinks, and she looks up at all of you, and she like tilts her head, and she's like, "You've all been through a lot today. I can tell."
It's been a very interesting past 24 hours.
"Oh yeah, I can see that. I heard you killed one of the men who caused all of this. One of the hired hands from the province of Ishtora."
Aye.
And she goes ahead and hands you all glasses of water, and she goes, I know alcohol is probably preferable, but I'd prefer you guys to not collapse of exhaustion or dehydration, so please have some water before going to bed, okay?"
I just like give Matthias a look like and no alcohol for you, like a smug like.
All right. I stare at our Crampin as I slowly push away the water and take out the flask I still have.
and Cauldry just kind of sorrowfully kind of takes the glass of water back and kind of sets it down. She goes ahead and just kind of continues serving all the other customers. And after you guys have just kind of been sitting there for a little bit, listening in on all the conversations of Crown's God members talking about how they're pretty much ready to crash, and some are like, "No, I could go all night, man." And you just kind of stands up on the table like, "Woo!" He's just, they're like, some of them, you can tell they're rather young, but like these guys were probably trainees in the Crown's Guard before all this happened, so they weren't like officially knighted, but they needed all the hands they could get. And then finally, Egil comes.
Wannabes.
More or less. Finally, Egil comes back with the half-orc woman you saw earlier, and she goes, yeah, Glenn told me about y'all. You were all, you were all Holly's friends, right?"
Aye.
"All right, nice to meet y'all." And she goes ahead and like extends a hand to you, Soren, since you were pretty much the only one to acknowledge her. And she's like, "Well, I guess for an official introduction, my name's Maggie Heraldine, and I'll be helping y'all out for the next few days as we head up north towards Hood River."
Nice.
Congratulations, welcome to hell.
and then Maggie just kind of looks at you, Matthias, and she's like, "You seem like an old friend of mine." And she goes ahead and walks over to you, and she's all, "You're the broody type, aren't you?"
Well, that's an understatement.
Can you repeat what you said? I didn't
Oh,
quite catch that.
and Maggie walks up to you and she goes, "You're the broody type, aren't you?"
I would use a different word, but you're right on the money.
She nods.
Well, then how would you describe it?
I have the attitude I deserve.
And Maggie
I'm
nods.
upset because I can't argue with that.
Yeah, fair enough. Maggie nods.
I have no retaliation.
She's like, "All right, I can understand y'all." And she looks at our crimp and she's like, "And well, here we are." And she kind of like puts her hands on her hips and she's just kind of like glaring at you and she's like, "A cramping warlock."
What do you want for him?
What?
God damn it!
What do you want for our cramping?
Oh.
I heard him the first time. I'm like, God damn it!
And she goes.
To sell our cramping.
She goes ahead and.
Excuse you, I am important to this mission.
And Bob's like, "You ain't shit." And
I'm more important than you are, you freaking imp bastard.
and she goes ahead and Maggie goes and kind of pokes Bob in the nose, and Bob just kind of like snarls and like shakes his head away, and she's all, "You got a cute one."
See, if you buy an our cramping, you get a free Bob.
And she's like, "I like those deals, but I think I'd rather have the Bob." And Bob's like, "See?"
Yeah,
It's only in
so
a
that
bundle.
I'd want to know what the return policy was.
Refunds and no returns.
Bob's like, "You return me, I send you straight to hell." And then Maggie's just like, "Y'all are just a cheery bunch, ain't you?" And she looks at...
Sorry, like I like turned to Bob like, wouldn't returning you be sending you to hell?
And Bob's like, "Hell is much better than this place, that's for sure."
You're the one who attacked me.
"Touché again, Mr. Warlock." And he goes out and just kind of crosses his arms and he kind of pouts and turns away. And then Maggie looks at Cassandra and she's all, "The princess, I've heard about you. Are you okay after Glenn kind of brushed me up a bit on what's going on? Are you okay?"
I could be better.
And she nods and she's like, "Yeah, I knew your father. He was a good man. Not so much your mother. She rubbed me the wrong way, but the father, he was a good man." But regardless, she goes in and clasps her hands together and she's all, "Follow me. I'll lead you all to your tent." And she goes ahead and starts kind of jogging through the crowd, and she's kind of like breathing a little heavily, like she's been through the ringer today. Do you guys follow?
Yeah.
All right. So she goes ahead and leads you towards this area where there aren't necessarily tents, but there are tarps laid out, and there are just various bedspreads, kind of like with a very pathetic-looking pillow, but like a nice thick comforter with each bedspread. And there are 4 of them, one of each for you, and they're all kind of laid out, like kind of sprawled out in random patterns. And she's all, "Well, this is where y'all will be sleeping. I know it ain't anything special for royalty here, but it's all we got for now. I hope you guys don't mind."
I've been sheltered at worse.
I'll take what I can get at this
If you can
point.
believe it.
All right, understandable. With that being said, I hope you all have a good night, and we'll see y'all tomorrow when we head further north, all right? And sleep well, be safe. Make sure you don't drink too early in the morning, all right? And she goes ahead and walks away.
Yeah, Matthias.
She's got your number already.
And as she heads away, do you guys go ahead and do anything before bed, or you just want to go ahead and head straight to bed?
No, Soren's gonna crash. She's exhausted still.
Fair enough.
I'm also
still
gonna
like
crash.
we're in. Wait, no, we're in a tent. No, never mind.
Oh no, you guys aren't in a tent. You guys are you're on like a tarp, so there's nothing covering you, but you do have bedspreads.
Ah, okay, I see what it is now. never mind. Forget I was gonna say anything.
All right. So, with that being said, as the night finally draws to a close, or rather, as the night kind of transitions into early morning, you guys finally come to sleep. And Crampin, you're just kind of meditating because you don't really need sleep. But
Yeah, because when I meditate, I'm semi-conscious, so I'm never fully asleep. I'm always aware of what my surroundings.
exactly. So with that, everyone finally turns in for the night. All the adults finally soothe the crying children enough for them to go to sleep. All the Crown's Guard find their way to their tents, and they all fall asleep. And in the silence of the night, Crampin, while you're meditating, you hear a rustling in the distance. You go ahead and open your eyes, and you look to where you heard the sound, and you see the familiar figure of a girl, and she's just kind of staring up at you. And she goes, "Did you put Mommy and Daddy to bed?" And then she just disappears. And then that is where we'll end today's episode.
God damn it, girl, again! No! No! You get your freaking dungeon master ass back in this goddamn session and continue the story! No!
My lad. We're Dunsky.
Yeah.
Gonna have to wait until next week.
Yep.
Next time on Dragon's Ball.
Next time!
Oh, you guys are great.
It's now Kuko and Kurt. Kristen Stewart must fight.
I hope they don't hit each other too hard.
Oh my god.
Little references there.
Oh my gosh, you guys are great. But man, I swear, you guys just make this game more fun to play every week. It's awesome.
Because we got a good dynamic here.
Oh, dude. Just, yeah. Alright, so yeah.
Self some credit, this story is awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I love the fact that this takes place in the Black Crystal universe, because I love making all these references, and it makes me so happy. But
And again, Black Crystal, like, you know, for those that are watching on my channel, it is one of our Dungeon Masters here. It's a book series that he got, so make sure to go check that out.
yeah, I mean, this campaign is literally called Legends of the Black Crystal, so there you go. It's canon to the book series, so there's that.
It takes place a few years after.
Or it takes place, yeah, 10 years after. But
That's also the name of my spin-off.
oh yeah, it is, isn't it? I mean, hey, it works out because it's like because like your book takes place like long after the books anyway too. So it's like it's almost like this is kind of what's happening.
Even take place like after this one.
Exactly, I was gonna say like this is almost like leading up to your book. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tonight. This was fun, and I will be seeing you guys next week.
And stay weird, my fellow weirdos.
Oh my goodness.